But the Velcarim were breaking now, and nobody knew how this war would end. 4 weeks after their arrival, the Velcarim fleet was fracturing from within. The signs were small at first. Officers taking longer to respond to orders, minor disagreements about tactics, small deviations from standard protocols. But in a culture built on absolute unity and hierarchy, small cracks were catastrophic. The fleet commander noticed the changes during a routine briefing. 3 of his senior officers had presented 3 different strategies for dealing with Earth. This shouldn't have been possible. There was only one strategy, the strategy that had worked for 200 years. "We should increase orbital bombardment," said the tactical officer. "Destroy their capacity to fight." "That will only make them more desperate," argued the logistics officer. "We should blockade the planet and wait for them to exhaust their resources." "Neither of those will work," said a third officer. "The humans don't respond to logical pressure. We should withdraw and report this to the High Command for analysis." Withdraw. The word hung in the air like poison. Velcarim forces never withdrew. They conquered or they held position until conquest was complete. Retreat was not in their vocabulary. "We do not withdraw," the commander said firmly. But even as he said it, he felt uncertainty, a feeling he had never experienced before in military operations. On Earth, Sora was having her longest period of clarity in weeks. Nearly 2 full hours of coherent thought. She used every second to analyze what was happening. The Velcarim frequency was definitely cycling, and during the down cycles humans recovered partial sanity. But something else was happening too. The chaotic neural output from billions of broken human minds was creating an interference pattern. It was broadcasting back into space, distorted and amplified by Earth's magnetosphere. The Velcarim ships were bathing in this chaos signal. Their orderly minds were being exposed to pure noise that their psychology couldn't filter or ignore. She managed to send a message to General Taeyang. "Chaos is contagious. Keep broadcasting. Keep being unpredictable. They're breaking too." Taeyang received the message during one of his clear moments. He understood immediately. The Velcarim had tried to break humanity and succeeded, but the broken pieces were now breaking the Velcarim. He issued new orders. Maximum chaos. Everyone do everything. Broadcast everything. Attack, retreat, surrender, fight all at the same time. Make noise. Make it loud. His staff thought he was having another episode. He was. But he was also being tactical in a way only a broken mind could understand. Military units across Earth began broadcasting on every frequency. They sent fake surrender offers. They transmitted attack plans that were obviously false. They broadcast random number sequences. They played music, static, recordings of politicians arguing. Anything to create noise. The electromagnetic chaos around Earth intensified. Every Velcarim ship in orbit was receiving this noise constantly. They tried to filter it out, but there was too much. It invaded their communications, their tactical displays, even their personal quarters. Captain Hyun had developed a new understanding of his situation. He had periods where he knew he was insane, and periods where he was just insane without knowing it. He decided both states were useful. When he knew he was crazy, he could plan crazy tactics intentionally. When he didn't know, he would execute them without hesitation. "I'm going to attack the mothership," he told his crew during a clear moment. "Sir, that's suicide." "Exactly. That's why they won't expect it. When I lose my clarity, follow my orders no matter how crazy they seem." 2 hours later, Hyun's clarity faded. He became convinced the mothership was actually a ghost ship that was already destroyed but didn't know it yet. He attacked it with this belief driving his tactics. He flew patterns that made no sense, fired at sections of the ship that had no strategic value, and broadcast messages about ghosts. The Velcarim mothership's defenses couldn't track his approach because there was no logic to it. Hyun's weapons fire, random as it was, struck several key systems by pure chance. The mothership took damage. Minor damage, but damage nonetheless. From a single human ship attacking a vessel 100 times its size. Hyun fled before the mothership could respond, convinced he had defeated the ghost. The Velcarim were convinced they had been attacked by a tactical genius using some unknown strategy. The truth was worse than either understanding. There was no strategy, just madness with weapons. Journalist Nari made a broadcast that became famous, though she never remembered making it. She stood in the ruins of Seoul and spoke directly to a camera, her mind fractured into several competing personalities. She described the war from 7 different perspectives simultaneously, contradicting herself every other sentence. We're winning because we're losing. We're losing because we don't know how to lose properly. The aliens are stronger, but strength doesn't matter when the fight makes no sense. We broke. They're breaking. Everyone's broken. And in the breaking, we found something they don't have. We found chaos. Beautiful, terrible, unpredictable chaos. The broadcast went viral. Humans watched it and felt understood, even though it made no sense. The Velcarim intercepted it and analyzed it for hours, trying to decode the strategic meaning. There was no strategic meaning. It was just a broken mind speaking broken truths. The Velcarim fleet commander was in his quarters trying to meditate. Meditation was how Velcarim leaders found clarity and order. But he couldn't find order anymore. His thoughts kept scattering. He would think about tactical options. Then his mind would drift to questioning whether the tactics made sense. Then whether anything made sense, then back to tactics, but with different assumptions. He was breaking. He knew it. The knowledge made it worse. He called another command meeting. All his senior officers attended. For the first time in Velcarim history, he asked for opinions instead of giving orders. "What should we do?" he asked. The officers looked at each other. This was wrong. Commanders didn't ask. They ordered. But they answered anyway because the situation was already wrong in every way. Destroy Earth completely and move. On. Withdraw and request. Reinforcements. Continue as we are and wait for human. Surrender. Negotiate a settlement. Study. The humans more before deciding. 5 different answers. 5 different strategies. The unity was completely gone. The Velcarim way of war required unified purpose and coordinated action. They had neither anymore. "We will vote," the commander said. The words felt alien in his mouth. Velcarim didn't vote. They followed the chain of command. But the chain of command was breaking. The vote was split. Nearly even across all 5 options. The commander realized he had to make a decision, but every option felt wrong. He was paralyzed by uncertainty, something that would have been unthinkable 4 weeks ago. While the Velcarim fleet debated, General Taiyang launched his final chaotic assault. He called it Operation Everything Everywhere. Every military unit on Earth attacked simultaneously. Every civilian who could fight joined in. Every frequency broadcast noise. Every weapon fired at once. It was chaos on a planetary scale. Most of the attacks accomplished nothing. Most of the energy was wasted. Most of the coordination was actually decoordination. But the sheer volume of chaos was overwhelming. Velcarim ships tried to respond but couldn't process the flood of threats. Their tactical systems were designed to prioritize targets based on threat assessment. But when everything is a threat and nothing makes sense, how do you prioritize? They took casualties. Small ships destroyed, larger ships damaged, supply lines disrupted, communication networks overloaded. And through it all, the chaos signal from Earth kept broadcasting, kept invading their ships, kept breaking their minds. The fleet commander made his decision. It was the hardest decision of his life. "We withdraw. Return to the nearest Velcarim outpost. We will report this to High Command and request guidance." Some officers agreed. Some protested. Some said nothing, lost in their own uncertainty. But the order was given. The Velcarim fleet began preparations to leave Earth orbit. The withdrawal itself was disorganized. Ships left at different times. Some wanted to fire parting shots at Earth. Others just wanted to flee. The formation that had arrived in perfect geometric patterns left in scattered groups. Captain Hyun was attacking a Velcarim battleship when he noticed the fleet moving. At first he thought it was a tactical repositioning. Then he realized they were leaving. Running away. The mighty Velcarim fleet was retreating from a planet full of broken humans. He stopped attacking and just watched them go. His crew watched too. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? On Earth, General Taiyang received reports of the withdrawal. He issued orders to pursue, then canceled them, then issued them again. His staff ignored him and made their own decisions. Some units pursued, some didn't, some celebrated, some kept fighting invisible enemies. Sora was in her lab when the Velcarim ships departed. She was having an episode where she thought she was a telescope. But some part of her mind registered what was happening. Humanity had won, not through superior tactics or technology or unity. They had won by being so completely broken that they broke their enemies. Journalist Nari broadcast the withdrawal live. Her report was fractured and confused, but the message was clear. The aliens were leaving. Earth had survived. Nobody knew exactly how, but they had survived. The LA. 2 weeks into the occupation, Earth was still fighting. Nobody was sure how or why. The Valkyrim controlled orbital space. They had superior technology. They had more ships, better weapons, and tactical experience from 34 previous conquests. By every measure, they should have won already, but they hadn't. Sora was having one of her clear moments. They came and went now. Windows of sanity between the psychotic episodes. During this window, she was analyzing data from the Valkyrim broadcasts. The frequency that was breaking human minds was cycling. It would hit hard for several hours, then ease off, then hit again. This meant humans got brief periods of partial clarity. 20 minutes here, an hour there. Just enough to think somewhat clearly before the madness returned. She tried to record this finding, but her clarity was fading. She managed to get a message out before her mind scattered again. Frequency cycles. Use clear moments. Plan during sanity. Act during madness. Chaos is weapon. The message was fragmented and barely coherent, but it reached several military commanders during their own clear moments. Some understood what she meant. Most didn't. But those who understood began trying something new. General Taeyang received Sora's message during a brief window when his mind felt almost normal. He immediately understood. They couldn't fight the Valkyrim with traditional tactics because traditional tactics required sustained rational thought. But if they planned during clear moments and executed during madness, the execution would be unpredictable even to themselves. He gave orders to his staff. When I'm not making sense, follow my orders anyway. When I seem crazy, that's when we're most dangerous. His staff looked confused, but they nodded. Many of them were having their own episodes and couldn't tell if this order was crazy or brilliant. Maybe it was both. Captain Hyun's clear moment came while he was halfway to Jupiter. He suddenly realized he had no idea why he was flying toward Jupiter. He checked his ship's logs and saw the chaotic path he had taken through the Valkyrim fleet. 3 ships destroyed, 7 damaged. All by accident. Accident is advantage, he muttered to himself. If I don't know what I'm doing, they can't predict it. He immediately changed course, but not toward any strategic objective. He plotted a path based on what felt right in his gut. His gut was being influenced by the Valkyrim frequency, so the path made no sense. He attacked targets that had no tactical value. He retreated when he should have pressed advantages. He broadcast false positions while simultaneously broadcasting real positions. The Valkyrim fleet tried to track him and failed every time. Hyun destroyed 2 more ships before his clarity faded, and he became convinced he was fighting ghost ships again. But now he was fighting ghost ships intentionally as a tactic, even though his tactical reasoning had disappeared. Journalist Nari's broadcasts had become legendary. She reported from war zones while completely disconnected from reality, yet somehow her reports contained accurate intelligence mixed with complete nonsense. Resistance fighters learned to watch her broadcasts and pick out the useful information from the chaos. During one broadcast, she claimed that Valkyrim ships were dancing in the sky above the Pacific. This sounded insane, but it was actually her broken mind's way of describing their patrol patterns. A submarine commander saw the broadcast, interpreted the dance correctly, and positioned his submarine to ambush a Valkyrim supply ship. The ambush worked. The Valkyrim never saw it coming because their threat analysis models couldn't account for intelligence gathered from a reporter having a psychotic break. All across Earth, similar patterns emerged. A teenager in Brazil hacked a satellite using code that made no logical sense but somehow worked. He crashed the satellite into a Valkyrim cruiser, then forgot he had done it an hour later. A group of pilots in Australia flew their jets on a mission they collectively hallucinated. Half of them thought they were attacking different targets. Their formation was chaos. But the chaos brought them through the Valkyrim defensive grid at angles the aliens hadn't anticipated. They destroyed a command ship before fleeing in 17 different directions. Minho, the maintenance worker turned accidental war hero, was trying to repair his space station. But during his repairs, he kept having episodes where he thought he was building a weapon. He rerouted power systems in ways that made no engineering sense. He connected systems that shouldn't be connected. When a Valkyrim patrol came near the station, Minho activated what he called his ultimate weapon. It was actually just the station's waste disposal system, combined with the communication array and half the life support system. It shouldn't have done anything except break the station further. Instead, it created an electromagnetic pulse that fried the Valkyrim patrol's navigation systems. 3 ships careened out of control. 1 crashed into another. The third limped away with damaged systems. Minho cheered his victory and immediately forgot how he had done it. The Velcorum fleet was suffering losses they had never experienced before. Small losses, but steady. Death by 1,000 random cuts. Their analysts tried to find patterns in human attacks. There were none. They tried to predict human behavior. Impossible. They tried to develop counter-tactics. How do you counter insanity? The fleet commander called a strategy meeting. This itself was unusual. Velcorum military operations didn't require strategy meetings. The doctrine was clear. Apply pressure, accept surrender. Occupy, extract resources, move on. But the doctrine was failing. The humans are not surrendering, stated the tactical officer. They are not even fighting coherently. But they are causing unacceptable casualties. We should destroy their major cities, suggested another officer. Force surrender through overwhelming destruction. That risks making them more desperate and unpredictable, countered a third officer. The commander was shocked to hear his officers disagreeing. Velcorum culture valued unity and obedience. Officers didn't contradict each other. They followed the chain of command without question, but uncertainty was creating cracks in their rigid hierarchy. We will continue orbital operations, the commander decided, but we will study the humans more carefully, find a weakness we can exploit. But the humans' weakness was that they were already broken, and you cannot break what is already shattered. General Taeyang launched what he called Operation Random Thunder. He gathered every available military unit and gave them all different, contradictory orders. Attack here, defend there, retreat, advance, hold position. Each unit received multiple orders simultaneously. The units did their best to follow orders. Some followed the first order. Some followed the last. Some tried to follow all of them at once. Some got confused and made up their own orders. The result was military chaos on a scale never seen before, and it worked. The Velcorum couldn't respond to Operation Random Thunder because there was no operation to respond to. It was just thousands of military units doing random things. Some of those random things accidentally accomplished strategic objectives. Most didn't. But the ones that did cause damage, the Velcorum couldn't prevent. A destroyer unit was supposed to defend a coastal city, but instead attacked a Velcorum landing site in the mountains. The landing site had been considered secure. The unexpected attack destroyed supplies the Velcorum needed. An infantry division was ordered to retreat but got lost and ended up behind Velcorum lines. They attacked not knowing where they were. The Velcorum panicked, thinking their perimeter had been breached by a sophisticated flanking maneuver. It was just soldiers who couldn't read a map correctly anymore. Sora was working on something during her brief, clear moments. She couldn't maintain coherent thought for long, but she was piecing together a theory. The Velcorum frequency wasn't just affecting humans. It was creating feedback. Human brains, breaking in billions of different ways, were generating their own chaotic neural signals. Those signals were broadcasting on similar frequencies. The Velcorum ships were receiving this chaos. Their orderly minds couldn't process it. It was like noise pollution for their thoughts. They were being affected too, just more slowly. She tried to document this, but her clarity faded. She spent the next 6 hours convinced she was a radio telescope trying to communicate with space. But during those 6 hours, her broken mind continued working on the problem in strange, sideways ways. Captain Hyun was attacking a Velcorum supply convoy when he had a moment of clarity. He realized he was attacking a supply convoy for no tactical reason. Then his clarity faded and he continued the attack because he forgot why he had started questioning it. He destroyed 4 supply ships before fleeing toward Mars again. He had no idea he had just disrupted a major Velcorum resupply operation. The Velcorum had no idea why he had targeted that specific convoy. It seemed random. It was random, but it hurt them badly. The war continued in this chaotic way. Every day the Velcorum expected things to stabilize. Every day things got more unpredictable. They were winning every tactical engagement but losing the strategic war. Their casualties were mounting. Their supplies were being disrupted. Their morale was cracking. And worst of all, they were starting to argue among themselves about what to do next. Unity was fracturing. Order was giving way to uncertainty. The very thing they had tried to create in humanity was happening to them. The humans had broken first. The Velcorum fleet commander was growing concerned. It had been 1 week since their arrival. 1 week since they had shown their power by scarring the moon. 1 week since they had given humanity a surrender deadline. But no surrender had come. No coherent response at all. Perhaps we should demonstrate our power again, suggested his tactical officer. Destroy one city. Show them we are serious. The commander considered this. Standard doctrine said yes, but something felt wrong. The humans were already in chaos. More violence might push them past the point of surrender into complete collapse, and collapsed civilizations couldn't be ruled or harvested for resources. We will attempt ground operations, the commander decided. Take the major population centers. Establish control directly. The first ground operation targeted Seoul. 3,000 Valkyrim soldiers landed in the city center at dawn. They expected resistance or surrender. They got neither. Some humans attacked them with kitchen knives and rocks. Others welcomed them as liberators and tried to offer food. Some ignored them completely and continued going about their daily routines as if alien soldiers weren't even there. A group of teenagers threw a party in a nearby building, music blasting while firefights erupted in the streets. The Valkyrim soldiers were trained for combat. They were prepared for guerrilla warfare, civilian resistance, or mass surrender. They were not prepared for a man in a business suit who walked calmly through the battle to catch a bus, stepping over bodies like they weren't there. This is Alpha Team, the Valkyrim squad leader reported. We have secured the initial landing zone, but civilian behavior is erratic and unpredictable. Requesting orders. Before orders could come, gunfire erupted from a building to their left. The Valkyrim returned fire, destroying the upper floors. The shooting stopped. Then it started again from a completely different direction. They returned fire again. Then shooting came from 3 directions at once. The squad leader realized the humans weren't coordinating. They were just shooting randomly. Some were shooting at the Valkyrim. Some were shooting at each other. Some seemed to be shooting at nothing in particular. General Taeyang had ordered a counterattack on the Seoul landing zone. Or maybe he hadn't. His staff wasn't sure anymore. But some units responded anyway. They attacked the Valkyrim positions using tactics that made no sense. One unit charged straight ahead with no cover. Another unit circled around for a flanking attack but got lost and ended up in a completely different district. A third unit set up defensive positions and then abandoned them to attack a random building 3 blocks away. But somehow, against all logic, the chaos worked. The Valkyrim couldn't predict where attacks would come from because the humans didn't know where they would attack. There was no pattern to disrupt, no strategy to counter, just random violence from random directions. The Valkyrim squad leader tried to establish a defensive perimeter, but his positions kept getting hit from unexpected angles. He called for air support. The support arrived and bombed several buildings. One of them contained human fighters. 2 of them were empty. One was full of civilians who weren't even aware a battle was happening. This is madness, the squad leader transmitted. We cannot establish control. The humans have no command structure, no tactics, no organization. How do we fight this? The fleet commander didn't have an answer. In 200 years of conquest, the Valkyrim had never faced this problem. Enemies were supposed to be rational. Even desperate enemies followed patterns of behavior. In orbit, Captain Hyun was having what he thought was a brilliant idea. He was convinced that invisible ghost ships were hiding among the Valkyrim fleet. He developed an attack pattern specifically designed to hit these ghost ships. The pattern made no tactical sense. It involved random course changes, weapons fire at empty space, and sudden retreats followed by equally sudden advances. He launched his attack. The Defiant screamed through the Valkyrim formation on a path that seemed designed by throwing darts at a star chart. Valkyrim ships tried to predict his next move and failed every time because there was no logic to predict. Hyun fired weapons at targets that didn't exist. Most shots missed everything, but some shots, through pure chance, hit Valkyrim vessels that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 ships took damage before the Defiant suddenly fled toward Jupiter, for reasons Hyun couldn't explain even to himself. The Valkyrim fleet scrambled to respond but couldn't coordinate a proper counter. How do you counter an enemy who isn't trying to accomplish anything? On Mars, a maintenance worker named Minho was having a psychotic episode. He was convinced the space station he worked on was actually a warship. He had been piloting it for 2 days using the maintenance thrusters. The station's actual crew had given up trying to stop him. Half of them were having their own episodes. Minho saw what he believed was an enemy fleet approaching. It was actually a Valkyrim supply convoy. He engaged the enemy by firing all the station's thrusters at once in a direction he thought was strategic, but was actually random. The space station lurched into an unexpected trajectory. It crashed into the Velkarim convoy at an angle no one could have predicted. The collision destroyed 2 supply ships and damaged the station badly. Minho, still convinced he was a starship captain, called it a victory and tried to pursue the retreating enemy. The Velkarim fleet commander received reports of the station collision. "Was it intentional?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. The station's trajectory made no sense. It could have been an attack or an accident or a malfunction. Which was it? We cannot determine that, sir." The commander felt something he had never felt before in military operations: frustration. The humans weren't fighting better than the Velkarim. They weren't using superior technology or tactics. They were just being unpredictable to the point of madness. And the Velkarim military doctrine had no protocols for madness. Back on Earth, journalist Nari was broadcasting from somewhere in Seoul. She wasn't sure where anymore. She was reporting on the battle, but her reports made no sense. She would describe Velkarim positions that didn't exist, then correctly identify real positions, then claim the whole battle was happening in a different city entirely. But scattered resistance fighters across the city were watching her broadcasts. In their own fractured mental states, they picked out fragments of truth from her chaotic reports. By accident, Nari's insane broadcasts were providing intelligence, not because she meant to, but because chaos sometimes creates patterns that logic cannot. "General, Taeyang ordered an assault on the Velkarim landing zones using absolutely everything available." His staff interpreted this in 17 different ways. Some sent tanks, some sent infantry, some sent artillery, some sent medical supplies by mistake, some sent everything to the wrong city. But the result was a massive, completely uncoordinated assault that hit the Velkarim from dozens of directions simultaneously. The aliens tried to respond with standard defensive tactics. Those tactics assumed attackers would have objectives and strategies. The human attackers had neither. A tank unit drove in circles around a Velkarim position, firing randomly. An infantry group charged, retreated, charged again, then stopped to argue among themselves about what they were supposed to be doing. Artillery fell on coordinates that seemed to be chosen by random number generation. The Velkarim casualties mounted, not because humans were fighting well, but because the Velkarim couldn't fight chaos. Their training, their experience, their entire military philosophy was designed for rational warfare. This wasn't rational. This was madness with weapons. After 3 days of ground operations, the Velkarim withdrew from Seoul. The withdrawal itself was controversial. Some Velkarim officers argued they should stay and establish control through force. Others argued they should pull back and reassess. Others suggested they should glass the entire city and move on. The fact that Velkarim officers were arguing at all was unprecedented. Their culture was based on strict hierarchy and unified command. Debate was not part of their military tradition. But facing human chaos was breaking something in their own order. The fleet commander made a decision that shocked his crew. "Withdraw all ground forces. We will maintain orbital control but cease ground operations until we understand the human behavior patterns better." "Sir, with respect, there are no patterns. That's the problem. Then we will create new protocols for dealing with no patterns. But how do you create protocols for chaos?" The Velkarim didn't know. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were facing an enemy they couldn't model, couldn't predict, and couldn't defeat through their usual methods. And the worst part was that the humans weren't trying to be unpredictable. They weren't using chaos as a tactic. They were just broken. The Velkarim's own psychological weapon had shattered humanity into a million pieces, and those pieces were now cutting the Velkarim fleet apart through sheer random chance. The war had only begun, and neither side knew how to fight it. The first sign that something was truly wrong came 50 hours into the countdown. A Chinese carrier group suddenly changed course and headed toward Australian waters. When questioned, the admiral insisted he was following proper defensive protocols. His orders made no tactical sense. Sora had barely slept. She kept running tests on the Velkarim signal frequency. The results were getting worse. The embedded frequency was interacting with human neural pathways in ways she hadn't predicted. It wasn't causing simple stress. It was causing something far more dangerous. "We need to warn people," she told her supervisor. "This signal is affecting human cognition. It's making people confused, paranoid, unstable. Her supervisor looked at her strangely. You've been working too hard. Get some rest. No, listen to me, Sora insisted. The frequency is creating a feedback loop in the brain. It's causing psychotic symptoms. We need to shut down all receivers, block the signal somehow. That's not possible. The signal is everywhere. Sora tried to explain again, but the words felt jumbled in her head. She looked at her notes. Had she written these? They didn't make sense. Or did they? She couldn't tell anymore. She sent out warning messages to every military and scientific facility she could reach. Most of her warnings were fragmented and unclear. Some were completely incoherent, but she sent them anyway, driven by desperate clarity that kept fading in and out. Captain Hyun was experiencing his own problems. He had locked himself in his quarters. His crew was worried. They kept knocking on the door, but he wouldn't answer. He was convinced that some of them were Velcarim agents in disguise. It made perfect sense in his mind. How else would the aliens know so much about human tactics? After 18 hours, he finally emerged. He gathered his officers and presented his plan. They would ram the Defiant directly into the Velcarim mothership. It was a suicide mission, but it would show humanity's courage. His officers stared at him. Sir, that's brilliant, I know, Hyun interrupted. Prepare the ship. We launch in 3 hours. 2 hours later, he called another meeting and canceled the plan. Instead, they would perform a surgical strike on the smaller ships. 1 hour after that, he changed the plan again. His officers stopped arguing. They just nodded and waited for the next change. On Earth, General Taiyang was having a similar crisis. He had developed 3 completely different battle plans in 6 hours. Each one contradicted the last. His staff was exhausted trying to keep up. Deploy forces to the coastal regions, he ordered in the morning. Pull everyone back to inland fortifications, he ordered at noon. Prepare for guerrilla warfare in urban centers, he ordered in the evening. Actually, concentrate everything in one massive defensive line, he ordered at midnight. His junior officers started making decisions on their own. Some followed the morning orders. Some followed the evening orders. Some just flipped coins to decide what to do. Journalist Nari was trying to report on the chaos, but she was becoming part of it. She recorded 14 different news segments in one day. Each one had a completely different tone and message. In one segment, she calmly explained that surrender was humanity's only logical option. In the next, she passionately called for total war. In another, she suggested the aliens might actually be here to help. In yet another, she claimed the whole thing was a hoax. Her viewers were confused. Her editors were panicked. But Nari kept broadcasting. She couldn't stop. Something inside her was fracturing, and the only thing she knew how to do was keep reporting. All across Earth, similar patterns emerged. Soldiers deserted their posts, then returned, then deserted again. Some formed their own militia groups with bizarre tactical objectives. One group in Norway decided to defend a random mountain because they were convinced it was strategically vital. Another group in Chile started digging underground tunnels to attack from below. Governments issued statements of surrender. Then they retracted the statements. Then they issued different statements saying they would never surrender. Then they changed their minds again. The President of the United States gave a speech calling for calm and preparation. 2 hours later, she gave another speech saying everyone should evacuate to underground shelters immediately. 4 hours later, she gave a third speech suggesting they should all pray for alien mercy. Religious leaders were equally confused. Some declared the Velcarim were demons. Others called them angels. Some said it was the end times. Others said it was a test of faith. A few said it was all a hallucination. The scientific community was fractured too. Thousands of papers were published in 3 days. Most contradicted each other. Some suggested negotiation tactics. Others proposed weapon designs. Some argued for immediate surrender. Others calculated that humanity had a chance if they fought in specific ways that made no logical sense. Sora had periods of clarity between episodes of confusion. During one clear moment, she realized what was happening on a global scale. The Velcarim frequency wasn't just affecting individuals. It was affecting everyone simultaneously. Billions of humans were having their neural patterns disrupted at the same time. But human brains were chaotic already. The frequency wasn't creating patterns of breakdown. It was creating random breakdown. Every person was fracturing differently. There was no unified response because there couldn't be one. She tried to write this down, but halfway through, She became convinced she was actually a radio tower and spent the next 3 hours trying to broadcast signals with her mind. The Velkarim were monitoring all of this. Their analysts were confused. Human behavior was following predicted patterns of social collapse, but not in any organized way. Usually, when a civilization broke under their psychological tactics, it broke into predictable factions. Peace seekers versus warriors, surrender advocates versus resistance fighters. But humans were breaking into thousands of pieces, each doing something completely random. There were no clear factions, no clear leaders, no clear anything. This is acceptable, the Velkarim commander decided. Total chaos means no organized resistance. We will simply wait for the surrender deadline. But the deadline came and went. 72 hours passed. No surrender came. No organized surrender could come because there was no organized anything. The Velkarim extended the deadline. Humans need more time to establish proper communication, they announced. What they didn't understand was that humans couldn't establish proper communication. Not anymore. The breakdown was complete. Captain Hyun was convinced his ship was haunted by ghosts. General Taeyang had started making military decisions based on dreams he had the night before. Nari was broadcasting in 3 different languages simultaneously, none of which she actually spoke fluently. Sora had another moment of clarity. She realized that the chaos was now self-sustaining. Even if the Velkarim stopped broadcasting, the psychological damage was done. Humanity had broken. Completely and utterly broken. But in her moment of clarity, she had one other realization. The Velkarim didn't know how to fight chaos. Their entire military doctrine assumed rational enemy responses. They scouted, they modeled behavior, they applied pressure, they waited for logical surrender. Nothing humans were doing was logical anymore. She managed to record one coherent message before her mind fragmented again. We're broken, use it. Nothing we do makes sense. Nothing we do should make sense. Embrace the chaos. The message spread through the fractured communication networks. Some military leaders heard it during their brief moments of clarity. Some understood. Some didn't. Some followed the advice. Some ignored it. Some tried to do both at the same time. But the message planted a seed. If humanity couldn't be organized, if humanity couldn't be rational, if humanity had completely broken under the Velkarim's own weapon, then maybe that was the weapon to use back. The Velkarim had come to break Earth, but Earth had broken first, and nobody yet understood what that meant for the war that was about to unfold in the most chaotic way imaginable. The stars disappeared first. Captain Hyun noticed it from the bridge of the UN Defiant, Earth's largest warship. One moment the night sky was full of distant lights. The next moment something blocked them out. Something massive. "Sir, we have contacts," his communications officer said. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook. 847 ships. They just appeared in orbit. Hyun stood up from his chair. 847. Earth had maybe 20 ships that could fight. Maybe. He looked at the screen showing the alien vessels. They were arranged in perfect geometric patterns around the planet, beautiful and terrifying. "Get me Pacific Command," he said. On Earth, General Taeyang was already in the command center when the reports came in. He had served in 3 wars, seen combat on Mars, and trained for alien contact his whole career. But nothing prepared him for this moment. The screen showed alien ships everywhere. They surrounded Earth like a net. "All military forces to high alert," he ordered. "Evacuate the coastal cities. Get the president to the bunker." His staff rushed to follow orders. Taeyang watched the alien fleet and felt something cold in his chest. This was not first contact. This was an invasion. At the Global Defense Network headquarters, scientist Sora was running calculations when the alarms went off. She looked at her computer screen and saw the data coming in. Hundreds of alien ships. Their technology was far beyond human understanding. The energy readings alone showed they could destroy Earth 100 times over. "We need to analyze their signals," she told her team. "Find out how they communicate. Maybe we can talk to them." But the aliens were already talking. Every screen on Earth suddenly showed the same thing. An alien face appeared. It had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern. Its skin was gray and smooth like stone. When it spoke, computers translated the words into every human language. "Humans of Earth," the alien said. "We are the Velkarim. We have conquered 34 star systems. Your world is now under our control. You have 72 hours to surrender. Your governments will transfer all authority to us. Your military will stand down. Your people will accept our rule." The alien paused. The four eyes seemed to look directly through the cameras into every home, every building, every shelter. "If you refuse," it continued, "we will demonstrate our power. You have 72 hours. Choose wisely." The screens went dark. For 10 seconds the world was silent. Then every phone started ringing. Every emergency system activated. Every government tried to respond at once. Chaos erupted across the planet. Journalist Nari was in Seoul when the broadcast happened. She was having coffee at a small shop, working on a story about the Mars colonies. Then the alien appeared on every screen in the city. She watched people's faces change from confusion to fear to panic. Her editor called immediately. "Get to the military base. Get interviews. We need to know what's happening." Nari grabbed her equipment and ran. Outside, the streets were already filling with people. Some were running home. Others stood frozen, staring at the sky. She could see the alien ships up there now, dark shapes blocking out the stars. The Velkarim were not cruel by their own standards. They were efficient. For 200 years, they had perfected the art of conquest. They studied each species carefully before arriving. They learned what scared them, what broke their spirits, what made them give up. For humans, they had determined that overwhelming force combined with a deadline would create panic. Panic would lead to blame. People would blame their governments for not protecting them. Governments would blame each other. The social order would collapse from within. Then surrender would come naturally, almost gratefully. It had worked on 34 other worlds. It would work on Earth. To prove their power, the Velkarim chose a target. Not Earth itself. That would make humans angry and desperate. Instead, they targeted the moon. At exactly midnight Greenwich time, they fired a weapon at the lunar surface. The dark side of the moon exploded. Not destroyed, but scarred. A massive crater appeared, visible from Earth even in daylight. The message was clear. "We can do this to your cities whenever we want." Captain Hyun watched from the Defiant. He had orders to engage, then orders to hold position, then orders to retreat to Mars. 3 different commands from 3 different authorities in 1 hour. The chain of command was already breaking. "Sir, what do we do?" his weapons officer asked. Hyun didn't know. For the first time in his military career, he genuinely didn't know. Every instinct told him to fight. Every calculation told him fighting was suicide. Every protocol was being contradicted by another protocol. "Hold position," he finally said. "Wait for clear orders." But clear orders never came. On Earth, the 72-hour countdown had begun. The Velkarim expected certain things to happen. First, panic buying and hoarding. That happened. Second, government emergency sessions. That happened too. Third, military mobilization followed by peace protests. Both happened simultaneously, but then things went wrong. Not wrong for humans. Wrong for the Velkarim's predictions. Governments didn't just have emergency sessions. They had emergency sessions that contradicted each other. The United Nations called for unity, while member nations declared independent strategies. Military forces mobilized, then stood down, then mobilized again with different orders. Peace protests happened, but so did war rallies. Sometimes in the same city, sometimes the same people would protest for peace in the morning and demand war in the evening. General Taeyang issued orders to fortify defensive positions. Then he received orders from civilian authority to prepare for evacuation. Then he received orders from another military branch to launch preemptive strikes. All 3 orders came from legitimate sources. All 3 were marked as top priority. He chose to fortify defenses. 2 hours later, he changed his mind and ordered evacuation. 4 hours after that, he was planning strikes. His staff followed each order, then got confused when the orders kept changing. Sora was analyzing the Velkarim broadcast signals when she noticed something strange. There was a frequency embedded in their transmission. It was probably just part of their communication technology. Nothing weaponized, but it was interacting with human brain patterns in an unusual way. She ran more tests. The frequency was subtle. It wouldn't hurt anyone directly, but it might cause some neurological effects over time. Confusion, maybe. Difficulty concentrating. She made notes to investigate further, but she kept getting distracted. She would start one analysis, then switch to another. Her thoughts felt scattered. She chalked it up to stress. Everyone was stressed. The whole world was stressed. 72 hours to decide the fate of humanity. On the Valkyrim flagship, the commander reviewed the human responses. Everything was proceeding as predicted. Chaos, confusion, social fracturing, perhaps even faster than expected. Humans were primitive and emotional. They would break easily. The commander had no doubt about the outcome. In 72 hours, maybe less, Earth would surrender. It always happened this way. Terror was the most efficient weapon in the universe. The countdown continued. 68 hours remaining. Nobody on Earth or in the Valkyrim fleet knew what was really happening. The frequency in the broadcast was doing more than causing stress. It was breaking something fundamental in human minds, and that breaking was about to change everything.